Should we say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 now as the first 1, 2, 3 to align ourselves, and the other 1, 2, 3s to actually? God damn it!
That's probably for the best.
Okay, so one,
One,
two,
two,
three,
three.
one,
One,
two.
two, three. Now.
Hello, and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Mass, and this is my co-host Mike. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike.
You excited for today's topic, Mike?
I am very excited for it because it's one of the things that my faction is good at. So I have a lot of hot takes and some takes of all kinds of temperatures, if I'm being quite honest.
Okay, but do you have any cold takes, like super cold ones, or is that just because like a Nord thing?
Oh,
Like,
believe me, I got cold takes about a lot of things.
Perfect. Just a heads up, our topic today is going to be actually about movement and positioning, unlike the lies we told you on episode 0.
They were well-intentioned lies.
We just talked about a Sears catalog for like an hour and a half. Like, go us.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about some rules changes that are going to be coming up, like kind of shortly. I guess shortly in like wargaming terms, because it's like, oh, they're a couple months out. So this summer in August is Gen Con, and Parabellum has stated that they want to release kind of like a 2.1 version, or maybe like, an errata / like adjustment to some of the rules that are in Conquest version 2 right now. I don't know if that's going to be a version 2, but what's been said is that's going to come out around May or June, like end of May, beginning of June-ish, like supposed to be like 2.5 months out from Gen Con, giving enough people to like play into it and build and get their list sorted out before they go to another major convention. What do you think about this, Mike?
The timing is right. I mean, 2.0 is good, but some stuff I think needs to be figured out, and just the timing of the cons with the release of the edition has, I don't know, I guess maybe led to a bit of a delay. I think people are feeling with respect to, or at least I'm feeling anyway, with respect to the first round of revisions. So I definitely think we're about due for it. So I'm pretty excited to see what comes of that.
I know there has been Leandros in the Parabellum Discord has been putting out like little teasers here and there. One of the teasers I know about, because I play 100 Kingdoms, so that's the one I'm going to focus on, is that Dynastic Alliance army rule is just going to be available all the time for 100 Kingdoms. So 100 Kingdoms players are just going to get 2 Warlords, and they are also going to get rid of the second Warlord scores you Warlord points when the Warlord is killed for scenario. This actually kind of opens up 100 Kingdoms really well, because now you just pick like veterans or relentless drills, so it's really nice.
Yeah.
And you can kind of like, there's been times where I've like just went, man, I would love to have like veterans or relentless drills on like a warband or by warband basis. But having like Dynastic Alliance and then choosing between the two for the rest of your army is actually kind of nice, and I do like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it seems to be what people largely are already doing with the faction, and just makes it part of it, which probably helps streamline things and,
okay,
focus more on the balance of the units and what I mean to say is, I think once that becomes an automatic part of the army, then you can start to balance as though that's going to always be the way the army is built, and that's probably for the best for the faction right now.
Yeah. We'll go for some of your hot takes, because you got takes of all varieties. What are you looking for in Nords? Like, what's a change up do you think is gonna either for sure happening or might be happening, or one that you would like to see happen for Nords?
That's a tougher one for me, just because I do feel like I'm still familiarizing myself a lot with that particular faction. I think it would be nice to see just the... I know that this is actually a longer shot than a lot of other things you can wish list for in terms of rule adjustments, but just to see a little bit more of the list building opening up in terms of what's available as mainstay and restricted. Like Volva is one particular one that gets brought up a lot, just because they pretty much they just take the Valkyries, and then they have Huskarls and Raiders as restricted options, which are a way to get those in there, but it's without any of the, if you just want to run a regiment of either of those units, then that is a way to do it. And Raiders, I think that has a place, but Huskarls generally seem to want to be a character carrier, I feel like. But I don't know. That might be me misreading the faction as a whole, but I think that's the main thing that I could say I want to see from. So I'm going to put that as a medium temperature, a room temperature take.
All right, so something I would grab from the table and eat, like, day-old pizza or something.
Yeah, it's still good. It's not the best.
Okay.
But it's not...
Like, I do see in a lot of other factions as well, like the sorcerer options in factions usually have a smaller warband selection than like the more melee or tactical focused characters. So like that'd be a really nice change up to actually happen, to see those characters get some more. I do know that from some of the developers from Parabellum that not all of the regiments have been released yet for each factions, or like on teaser. The only ones that are like on teaser that you see without actual was it like pictures, is the ones that they are like kind of coming down the line faster than everything else, and they do plan to release more units and regiments that are focused upon that character as the game goes on. So like they'll probably get something eventually. It's just like right now you're kind of suffering from it, like, because there isn't a ton of choice.
Yeah. But even then, like, I find and maybe this is just me in the way that I like to build lists, but like the Blooded, for instance, potentially they could, I feel like they could open things up a little bit more there. But the more I think about it, and actually this kind of dovetails with the point that I also wanted to make with respect to Nords, because I thought of a slightly warmer overall take with respect to the faction, and what I touched on in the last episode as well, is that trolls right now kind of don't have a place, or their role is less clearly defined as was previously. So to see them kind of sharpened up design wise, I think would be nice, because they are really cool models and a cool premise for a unit, but they're just a little bit short right now.
Okay, cool. So the rule of the week is going to be more in your wheelhouse, just because you're a Vadrun player and you've had to deal with this every single time you played Vadrun. So do you want to read it off for me?
Yes. One moment.
And I'll get the one that ties into this, even though it's like a sentence long.
Yeah, so today we were going to be talking about Bloodlust, and because of the way Indomitable interacts with that, we wanted to touch on that as well. So the text of Bloodlust presently is as follows, and that is: when a regiment with this special rule is currently on the battlefield and takes an action, if the regiment is not in contact with an enemy regiment, roll a d6. If this result is less than or equal to the highest resolve characteristic in the regiment, you may perform an action as normal. If the result is higher, you must perform a charge action against the closest enemy regiment in line of sight and within the regiment's maximum charge distance. If there is no eligible target to charge, you must perform a march action directly towards the closest enemy regiment in line of sight. A regiment must always march its maximum march distance when forced to move as a result of this special rule. This special rule allows a regiment to charge a target even in the round in which it arrived on the battlefield from reinforcements.
Okay.
So it's a big guy.
Yeah, that's a lot, but what does that really mean? Can you, because I know you have to deal with this thing a lot more than me, and from my perspective, it's kind of a hindrance more than it is a beneficial rule on regiments, just because it's forcing you to charge and march at stuff if you don't have a high enough resolve to make that dice roll.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% a downside. I think it's the rule that makes Braves as cheap as they are for Wadroon, for instance. But I think it's meant to be more of a downside than anything else. But it does have like a small benefit that you can situationally take advantage of. But sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So to break it down in simpler terms than that very dense 2 paragraphs of rule text, if a unit has Bloodlust and it when you take an action, if you're not in contact with an enemy regiment, like if you're not engaged, you have to roll a d6 before you take the action. And if the result is your resolve or the highest resolve in the regiment or less, then you pass and you can just take the action as normal. But if not, then you either have to charge the closest enemy unit in line of sight or move towards them. So you just take a march action straight towards them if the charge is not going to work, like if there's no eligible charge.
Can you wheel, let's say, like if you marched and wheeled to be closer, because like you're technically closer, or does it have to be like the full maximum distance? Like, is there any way around like that you can kind of do?
So the rulings that we've gotten, or the expansion of the rule so far, if I recall correctly, is that it's just a straight march. You can't really get fancy with it, and it's my understanding that that's to avoid you being like, okay, I have to take the march, but I only move up 1 inch. Like, I think the intent of the rule, as I understand it, is to make sure that you move the full march action, but I don't think it allows for any wheeling or adjustment. But that might be something that I send an email to the rules team about to clarify, just because it's a fair point. It generally doesn't. Yeah, it's but there's a couple ways around it. In any case, like as long as, so if you're screening unit in front of them, it's actually one of the few benefits of hunting packs versus other screens. Kind of. I mean, anything is the same size as a size 1 unit, so actually I'm kind of lying. But anyway, having something that breaks line of sight is the easiest way to avoid having bloodlust problems, because they can't lust for the blood of something that they can't see.
So you could hide them behind like a building or a wall, and they're just like right in the face of it, and they're like, "Sir, what are we doing?" It's like, you're standing here so you don't run off the zone.
Yeah, they're so mad, but they can't see the thing to get.
Would you get onto an objective zone and then reform 180 just so that you don't look at anything and like deal with it later? Is that like a cheat kind of to get around this?
It's a strategy I've definitely seen discussed, and if I didn't get punished for every time I try to be clever in this game so severely, it's something that I might try. But just because generally if I show a regiment's ass, somebody's going to put a weapon into it. I don't want that to be the solution personally.
Well,
especially because... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Those Vadroon have very fancy, or not very fancy, but they got some cake on them. So, like, of course I want to carve that up. I want a slice.
Problem is the shield is on the front, especially with the Braves. So, doubly you don't want them to go butt first into the conflict.
Don't ever go butt first.
Yeah, it's usually a bad idea. But Bloodlust isn't a total wash, because one cool thing, as it mentions, and a lot of people get confused about this, is that it's you can charge even on the round that you come into the battlefield from reinforcements, which regiments normally are not able to do. And there's a misconception that that's tied to passing or failing the Bloodlust check. Like the resolve check, but the two things don't really have anything to do with each other. Like, you can pass both your rolls and then just decide to charge from reinforcements if it makes sense for you. So that in that respect, there's a situational bonus if you're in a position to take advantage of it, which is not always possible. You know?
Okay, so now, like, understanding that, like, you can charge from deployment, can you, because normally how you get onto the table is you line the unit up at the table edge and then do a march action on. Can you do a charge action on and through and into something, then do a clash action? Or do you have to do that first march? Because I would have to look through the base rules again and then do the charge action from there to like get in.
I do. I mean, I would have to go digging through the rules to confirm this, but my heart and my memory of the rule book tells me, the rule book that I'm looking at right now, I can just check. But my sense is that the game does obligate you to complete a move action when you're coming onto the table. So I think the best you can hope for is to either stick into somebody or what am I trying to say here? Or if you have impact attacks, like that's one case where.
Oh yeah, because you can impact attacks on the the Braves with the Matron Queen. Like, isn't there like a relic or something she takes, and she's like, "All right, boys, let's get impacted."
Yeah, I mean any character can take it in the faction because it just requires tactical 1 to unlock banner. She's just a particularly good choice for the faction to manage that brave block for a couple reasons. One is she has really high base morale, which effectively mitigates a lot of the risk with running the Braves. And then when you have, and this is such a perfect segue, but I don't feel like we're quite there in terms of the actual topic discussion yet, so this is going to be a tough one to pull together, but I think I'm going to get there. Indomitable on her is particularly good because, I mean, her base resolve is as I scroll up here furiously, 4. Yeah, so she goes to a 5 really easily in any size unit, and then that takes away a lot of the risk. But the fun thing is, because of the way the rules are currently phrased regarding resolve checks, Indomitable just lets you ignore a failed Bloodlust check. So
because it is a resolve check. So for the listeners, Indomitable says when this regiment rolls a resolve test, treat one failed result as a success. So you just get it. You can always pass.
Yeah, and that's just it. So that takes away a lot of the risk there. But getting your resolve up high also helps. But in my experience, you'll always roll that 6 right when you absolutely don't need it. So consistency is very valuable to me personally.
Get rid of randomness in the war game. Yeah,
anything that seems like such a unfun, accountanty, lawyery way to play a war game, but you know what? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, man. Like randomness for rules is fun, but when you start like stacking a lot of them, it starts getting a little crazy, and it's either you got to delve deeper into the randomness of the design of the game, or you have to strike that balance of like randomness and chance while having concise options that are going to succeed, like let's say 9 out of 10 times, just because of how they're written or how they work. Like you reduce randomness, or some things are just like you take this rule and you resolve you don't have to deal with the randoms anymore. Like it's a war game. You kind of like, the goal is to have fun, but you play to win. So taking options and looking for things that help you out, they're there. You just gotta go find them, or like figure it out, or talk to people and just look for them.
Yeah, it's the same as like with in particular, again, the Wood Rune, which I've played the most out of any of the factions, so a lot of my experience is going to relate to that, which is more for the listeners' benefit than yours, because you already know that. But
oh yeah, how many apexes have you put on the table at one time?
Not enough, it's my opinion, but the developers seem to feel a different way. But nonetheless, what was I saying? So with the Wood Rune, like the other thing is with chance, if you're trying to use, like if you're using one chance, it's pretty easy to manage overall, but having multiple chants or multiple cults can, like, 2 is it's harder than you'd think. 3 is actually quite difficult, but if you're taking tier 2 conquest, then you can make the character and their unit or their regiment produce conquest chants, for instance, and that helps smooth out a lot of the inconsistency or a lot of the risk there. So that's really good too. So yeah, you're right. I mean, anything that smooths things out is good. And I mean, that's why Blessed is such a tremendous ability in Flurry.
Yeah. So, one of the what is it? Little tidbits or little like hints of what that rule change is coming before Gen Con is that Bless is no longer going to be affecting range attacks. It's only going to be for clash and defense rolls. The only 2 factions I think can like give it out as a spell are 100 Kingdoms and Nords from the Valkyrie and the Theus Priest. So I guess like getting like Merc crossbows and militia bowmen like re-rolling or longbows is the bane of everyone's existence, but maybe it's that Volba with those volley 3 bow chosen trying to re-roll for 1s to just get rid of defense.
Yeah, like you can fish for 1s, and not only that, but if that's not like if that's not what you're doing, like evasion 2 is okay. Evasion 2 with a reroll, quite a bit better.
Yeah, as we found out when I think Ben at Arms went into them, and you're like, save everything, and I'm like, great.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Should we get on to our main topic? So that's movement and positioning.
Yeah.
What do we want to say about movement and positioning? Like, this is gonna be the main thing you're gonna be doing through the entire game. Is you're gonna be moving your regiments and position them into the appropriate spots that are gonna help you towards your path of victory. Like what you're gonna be doing to win the game. When I was first introduced to Conquest, I was told that this is going to be some hot on hot brick action, and it's kind of true. Like you are moving, like your regiments are all in bricks, and it's trying to get a brick through different terrain features around other regiments, trying not to land on stuff. Like you, and this kind of ties into the positioning. Is you got to think about or think ahead a couple turns of like, this unit is going to come on the table. Where are they going to go after? Okay, if there's something in the way, can I jump over it because I can run through my own models, or can I get them to go first so that I can take their spot? Sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, when everybody's fighting in a bumper car, like movement becomes kind of the biggest. I think it really is the most important mechanic in the game, just because it determines so much, because how you move and the decisions that you make early on, and how you commit to certain pathways through the map are going to have such an impact on the game that once you get into combat, it's almost like that's just the resolution of it all. It's whatever was going to happen has kind of been decided in a lot of key ways before the actual clash happens.
Yeah, so when you're looking at like where your movement and positioning is going to be, like when you first approach a table and you're putting all your models down and like setting them up their stands and kind of putting them on like that little area between like the edge of the table and let's say the edge of the mat. I know a lot of wargamers, especially like these days, maybe not back in the olden times with you, Mike, where you were like, back in 9,000 years ago, we used rocks and we just had to draw lines in the dirt.
It worked great for us, so I don't know why you're being like that, but go on.
I'm being facetious to like you and your people.
Rude.
But when you do come to that table and you're lining up all your stuff, you wanna look for your pathways and your avenues from getting from your side of the table to your opponent's side of the table. Like you're never gonna get there, like quotes, like maybe you'll get a unit over there and you'll start hitting people as they come onto the table from your opponent's side, but that's usually like something super fast, but your opponent will just counter deploy and kill it because it's so far out and not being supported by anything else. But like your kind of mental goal is to get to the other end of the table and have those pathways where you can kind of hide behind terrain and then use terrain to, let's say, reduce shots or incoming damage towards you. Either that's from like charges from regiments because they can't see you, using obscuring terrain so you reduce the shots coming into you, and you're trying to make your way to the other side of the table because like that's your path, but you're gonna kill all the stuff in that way of that path. Well, that's your hopeful goal, is to kill all that stuff. But if you, let's say, wrongfully deploy and turn one you march up your, let's say you have a banner and you're like 11 inches of the table with an infantry unit, and then you march again but there's a building in the way, well, now you gotta wheel, so now you're losing distance wheeling, and then you gotta like march again and wheel, and you're losing and you're kind of like fumbling and fighting this thing. But if you, let's say, deployed 5 inches over in a more clearer spot that didn't have as much terrain, or terrain you can move through very easily, you didn't have to worry about that and lose that distance and get hung up on stuff because you're moving a brick. Like it's not easy to get these regiments around just because of how they're set up. Like a lot of people run like 3 wide, 2 deep. I've seen some 2 wide, 9 deep get into like the militia, just the militia. God, there's some guys who are like, we're gonna run 1,000,000 of these things. It's like, please stop. I don't know. Like, this train has only one direction. You can't twist it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so understanding where you're going to be putting stuff on multiple turns, like one of the things I do when I play is I'm always looking for where is this unit going to be at the middle of the table and then a quarter onto my opponent's side. So three quarters of the table up from my deployment. And how am I going to get there? And that's going to kind of tell me the path I got to take and what kind of terrain I'm going to use or move away from to get there.
Yeah.
I'm talking for a bit here, Mike. Do you want to jump in as I take a sip of water?
Yeah, I mean, like with the way that the scenarios are designed and the way that the tables generally tend to be laid out, at least where we play, I almost think about it in like MOBA terms, where there's going to be 2 to 3 lanes, and that's going to dictate a lot of the engagements as the game plays out. So yeah, it comes down to determining like how you're going to get things up the table in the order that you need for things to execute the way that you want them to succeed, because especially on the short end to short end table deployments, because I think the regional slang that we use for that is not common. So I'm going to say short end to short end deployments. It's pretty easy to traffic jam your own guys. And I've definitely run into situations where I lose a turn just like wiggling regiments around so that they don't walk over each other or charge through each other and break one another or something, some other weird, stupid thing because things didn't work out.
Yeah, that pardon me. Should we talk about that? Like charging and potentially breaking your own stuff?
Yeah, it's come up for me enough times that it's probably worth getting into.
Okay, because I've actually had it never happen because I'll just be like, nah, fam, I'm not taking the risk. That unit in front of me can die or hold there. I'll wait.
Yeah. It's generally, if I'm taking that risk, it's because I've made a different positioning error that I'm now trying to move my way out of. I don't like taking risky charges for the most part, even with Unstoppable. If it's anything more than 3 inches, it feels like not a great idea unless it's going to pay significant dividends.
Or maybe you have you're like getting a secondary charge in, like you have something who's fighting that unit originally and acting kind of as like a tar pit or a speed bump, and then you're looking for, well, I could go for that long bomb, but if I fail, he still has to kill all those guys. Like,
yeah, like
that's good.
Sometimes when I'm just trying to get into position with like my second, like my hitter piece, and if it doesn't make the charge, it just moves up a couple inches, and that's fine. So why not take the risk at that point? But
well, we had that game during the March tournament where I was like, I'm gonna roll a 5+ with a reroll and see if I get it. Nope. And then I'm like, I'm gonna roll a 3+ with a reroll. Nope. I'm gonna roll. That's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck. Did it 2 turns in a row, and I'm just looking at myself like, man, I should just march charged like two
Yeah.
turns ago.
I mean, honestly, there are some games where I don't even feel like a 1 inch charge is safe. It
Really?
just seems like the bottom falls out no matter what the dice. No matter how easy the die roll is going to be, somehow it fucks up. Like I'm convinced that even if it's like my movement +1, like the classic auto in charge, I'll roll a die just to be cute, and then it'll just come up blank just that one time.
Yeah,
And we have to.
You get a 13 on the 6-sided dice, and it's like, well, you won because you cheated.
Yeah, but it's like if it's a blank face, that's not even cheating for my own benefit. That's just like, oh well, I guess I don't.
Man, you imagine if you rolled a die and you're like, it just came up blank. You checked all the sides at this point. You're like, what happened?
Yeah, it's honestly a really funny premise to me.
Just am I cursed?
Yeah.
It's like...
That's why I don't. A lot of people like to roll the die on auto in stuff, just to be cute, but not me, because like, you don't know what's gonna happen in this crazy universe.
I have a holdover from like War Machine where like, well, so okay, rolling that charge and then like getting that auto in, like you're a speed 5 infantry, you take like you measure out 6 because you auto get the 1 and you're like, okay, I'm in because it's 6 inches. I'll just like, I checked all those and I just take it, and that's kind of like a holdover from War Machine where it was like movement +3 and you'd check that distance and be like, all right, I'm in, and you just move your guy. So for me, like random charges are a bit of a frustrating thing because I played a game for like 8 years where you just measure and like you are either in or you are not in. Like there's none of that randomness. So if you are setting up your lists, or not your list, but if you're setting up your regiments to have your hammer unit and to just give you a quick description of a hammer unit is something that is going to be doing a ton of damage. So examples are Steel Legion in 100 Kingdoms, Uger in Nords, something crazy in Vadrun. I'm gonna go with like an Apex Predator.
Like a dinosaur 1 in 6 times if you positioned everything perfectly.
It'll kill stuff like in Dweg. You got your Dragon Slayers and what do we got? Spires. I always forgetting about Spires. And, like Incarnate Sentinels. I've been hit a couple times by those things. Like god damn, they just do like they'll smack you.
Yeah.
But what you have in front of you is like a weaker unit. So Spires, Foursquare Drones, 100 Kingdoms Militia, Wadroon, like the hunting pack that Mike has brought up a couple times. Like you'll have those weaker things that you've just sent off to die and like pin that unit in place. So if let's say they move up, you move that weaker thing into them, and you just do a march charge. And it's like, okay, you didn't do any attacks. Like, oh, you haven't done any attacks. It's like, no. Those guys aren't there to attack. They're not there to do damage. They're to just set up for my hammer unit, like that big beefy thing that's going to hit you, so that you can't get to me, but I can get to you. And I have ran up that militia unit so that it will receive an attack, and they'll die, or there's like a space open enough for my other unit to get in there, and I'll put my other unit 6 inches away from the unit I want to kill that's currently being tied up by a bunch of militia. And that goes into like the bit of positioning where it's like, okay, you've thought ahead a bit, you've got your militia in, you got your hammer ready to go, next turn happens, let's say you lose the roll off. Well, it's not the end of the world. He can go fight your militia or your like hunting pack or your Foursquare drones, kill them, or like mess them up a little bit, like whoever knows whatever like you're fighting against. But then you're ready to actually hit them with that hammer unit and just slaughter and kill them. Like that's a bit of the positioning there, and that's a really like easy one to understand at a base level, is to just sacrifice those cheap light or like low value stuff that's kind of like mainstay options
or
to have your
almost
bigger
200 point slingers.
Are slingers 200 points these days?
Well, they're pretty close. Like if you take the flint napper, which I do, it's like 185.
As you should.
Yeah. Well, I think you should, but So one thing actually that that you mentioned towards the end there that I wanted to expand on is with one of the more recent revisions to the rules is before you didn't need line of sight to declare a charge, and now you do.
Oh, yes.
So that's something that you have to plan for, either by having having a longer rank on your charging unit so that they have a couple guys who can see around, or just planning to lose enough stands to open up that line of sight. But it's something like I've certainly had. Nothing gives one of my regiments the will to live more than me sending them in with the specific intention of holding somebody up and dying. Like those 12 guys suddenly are like walking off of that battlefield alive. So that never works out for me. But when I need somebody to hold on, they get scared and they die of fright instantaneously. But yeah, it's not off. It's depending on what units you have access to. It's not a bad idea to throw a light specifically or a weak unit with the intention of it peeling one or two stands and then opening up an angle for you to get your next unit in there while they're still hanging on.
Another good one is size difference. So like infantry is all size 1, brutes are size 2, monsters are size 3. So when you get up into those higher size, people can see you, but also you can like see over stuff. So ranged monsters and brutes can see over infantry and hit into the back line. So if there's like a light merc crossbow or militia bowmen who have like an imperial officer or a theist priest like in a zone scoring, you're a size 2 brute. I believe there's one with like Old Dominion. It's the statues who like shoot arrows. They could just shoot into those militia bowmen and like kill them all over a turn or two, and then your character runs off, and now you're no longer scoring that zone, and you're like, well, huh? What's going on? How'd you do that? Like, you have to watch out also for like size things, because they just see over people. They're like, I'm big.
Yeah.
Like, hello there. And you can't just like see over them because they're so big. Monsters and Moomin are actually they're very maneuverable because they are, I believe, a 5.5 inch base length and width. So they're actually a square comparatively to everyone else's regiment. What ends up being a rectangle just because of how it works. The only time it becomes a square if you're running like a 2x2. But most people run like 3 wide or like 2 wide, and however many deep. Yeah. But monsters are very maneuverable because they just needle point, turn, and pivot to do stuff. Yeah. And they can actually get into things a little easier if you leave just a little bit of like a gap, and like the monster stand can just touch the other stand, and then he just goes to town. So you do have to watch out for monsters and how maneuverable they are. You'll see them out of like the Apex Predator, the Mountain Jotnars, probably the Ice Jotnar, because he likes to like run around and like cast spells and then just get into melee with things and just still cast spells because, oh god. But yeah, like it's actually kind of funny with monsters that way, just because of the base size comparatively to what you normally have.
Yeah, people underestimate the maneuverability of monster stands until my Apex Predator is eating their backline men-at-arms, and it's one of the few matchups where I can just like send her on in and not worry too much about my dinosaur getting killed, which is it's rare, so it feels nice.
It feels nice. You get some like juicy targets. Didn't you play the Apex Predator into like a bunch of brutes and you're like, oh, Fiend Hunter, here we go? Just like went to town on all of them?
Yeah, Fiend Hunter is like, I mean, I don't want to save all of our good material or blow all of our good material until we touch on that particular rule in more depth, but like people forget the dinosaur is Fiend Hunter, and then they send their giant into it and she just deletes the giant in one activation, and I feel like a stud.
Do you ever strike a pose after that's done, where you just like just killed the giant and you're like, strike a pose?
In my heart, yeah.
Oh yeah, you don't assert dominance across the table to your opponent?
Not in that way. Yeah, I mean, I want to, don't get me wrong, but it's it's a good rule, and yeah, that's my point about that.
Yeah, we will talk about it more in depth in a future episode during Rule of the Week. Um, so what else can I talk about for positioning? So, um, when currently I'm playing a very infantry heavy list for 100 Kingdoms, that has like it's running like a bunch of different characters, as well as like shooting. So shooting currently is like the meta. Like a lot of people are looking at their range options. This does affect different factions differently. Like Old Dominion doesn't have very much shooting, so they kind of suffer currently because of it. While Dweg, Spires, Wadroon, 100 Kingdoms all have good, like a varying degree of like decent to good shooting and choices. Um, when you're moving up the table, you should be looking at how do you like take in shots, because usually the a lot of light units are actually shooting units for factions, and then a bunch of mediums are as well. Like it's kind of rare, I want to say, that you see a shooting heavy. I know there's the Sea Jotnar who has a gun, but the first bit of damage you're going to be taking as you play is going to come from range sources. So how do you move up and like handle that? And the thing I want to make here is that you kind of either like bring your own guns, and if it's not like, let's say, far range, you bring a bunch of shorter range guns, so that as you're getting shot, you eventually get there and you can just like fire from a bunch of different sources to take out the enemy shooting. Or you start looking for like faster options, so hunting pack, raptor riders, mounted squires, and you're starting to look for like terrain to kind of like sneak in and get to your opponent's shooting before hopefully they put like a medium or a heavy in front of it so that it can be safe and like survive turn after turn. Um, then there's finally like the last one that I'm going to talk about as a strategy. What is basically you just wait. So you slowly start bringing all your regiments on, and you just kind of like wait at your back table, and you start looking to play the long game, because the game ends at turn 10. But scoring starts at turn 2, so it kind of leads to more light slash medium focused armies that can score early and score often, while heavier armies who come out like turn 3 get on the table, and then like maybe turn 4, if stuff is far enough forward, start doing stuff, but they usually like don't start hitting stuff until like 5. That's kind of like 5 and 6 they start hitting stuff, and then it gets dragged on. But at that point, if you're running a very heavy focused army, your opponents moved in, looked for those scenario options and started scoring them, or took it out objectives to be up on points, so you're like trying to crawl back.
Yeah.
As well as scenario no longer allowing you to win by tabling your opponent, what was a valid strategy before, and now it's all points. So you really want to have that focus on the scenario and where those scenario elements are, so that you can move in, put medium characters and lights to score the back ones, or just medium character or medium units that could score them, and start fighting your way across to score, let's say, the middle objectives or the ones on your opponent's side of the table.
Yeah, I'd say from 1.5 to 2 overall, the game has gotten a lot cagier overall. Like as a Wadroon player in 1.5, we're always trying to get up the table as quickly as possible and get that board position and disrupt my opponent's plans for their deployment to the greatest degree that I could while things are still in flux. Whereas now, like, in the first 3 or 4 turns, like, I'm stacking my characters in the top or the middle of the stack, trying to lose those roll-offs, and to the degree that you can, and try and get as much, play cagey and get as much information before you commit to a course of action as possible in 2.0. But one thing that I try to keep in mind a lot as well is that, like, coming from other tabletop games where there's fewer turns overall, like 3 to 5 turns in some cases for the most part, there's a sense of urgency there that you want to get to where you're going and get your guys doing what they're doing as quickly as possible. But like kind of try to remind myself that with 10 turns overall, like as long as I've got the pieces to get my scoring engine in place as quickly as possible, like my fighting guys can take their time and, you know, pick their shots. And that's a good probably attitude to have currently in 2.0 where, you know, it you're not gonna win, like you're not gonna last too many clashes, so getting that first hit in for at least any of the factions I play is vital, and I feel like it's important even for the more resilient factions.
Okay, okay. You did mention characters, and this is actually this is a really good one. When you're drawing your command deck and you're going through your characters, a lot of people early on will draw their characters to kind of like burn activations in that like the you go I go rounds, because you're waiting to see like what your opponent's going to do if you have, let's say, like a unit advantage, or you're in a strong scenario position and you can take that time, because that also like how do I say this, it removes your opponent's choices because they're drawing cards and they have to activate units and regiments to do stuff, and that allows you to just kind of like bait things out. So if there's like, if this guy comes forward, I can charge him. If I come forward, they're gonna charge me, and you're kind of in that like chicken. But if they draw their card and sit there, and you're in a commanding scenario lead, you can sit there as well, and you can wait for them to come into you because you've positioned yourself early on to start scoring on scenario and putting that scenario pressure stress upon your opponent, so they start coming towards you. And if you have a card advantage and you start drawing those characters early on because you're not in threat of anything, like either their volleying is going to be like volley 2 and there's like no AP on it, and it's just hitting like defense 3 defense 4, like, you know, defense 3 with a shield, like, you know, do a little bit of damage but nothing like too crazy. And like, you know, let's say the regiment is 6 stands, like you're going to lose a couple guys but nothing like too crazy. You can just like take those hits and like still score on scenario, and your opponent will most likely, you know, get a little stressed out and like make a poor decision. What's, you're drawing characters, you're like casting spells with characters, you're buffing with characters, you're just dead drawing with characters. So you they draw their melee card, what they wanted to go on, let's say later, or they were hoping that you would have moved forward by now, and they feel anxious and they move forward, allowing you to draw your opposite regiment card and then go in and hit them with that first hit. Like charging this game is really powerful, like if you can get that charge and that clash in, because you have the first opportunity to damage and kill stands. And killing stands reduces the damage coming back to you, allowing that unit to live longer and be more effective as the game goes on.
Yeah.
Another thing about characters, and something I've done plenty of times, is I've actually put characters, let's say, in the middle or maybe in the end of my command deck. And I'm doing that because I want the unit to, let's say, like march on. Like I'm playing 100 Kingdoms, so we have the Vanguard Supremacy ability from the Imperial Officer, so I get a free march action as I come on. So like I'll march 5 up, I'll then march, do my second march, which gets the banner for 6, and then I'll do my third march because I got that free march to begin with. So I basically 3 march, so I get like another 5, so it goes up to 60 inches up the table. Well, if I had a chapter mage and a unit of men-at-arms, that chapter mage is now 60 inches up the table, and then casting a fire dart 14 more inches. So like I'm threatening 30 inches across a 48-inch table if we're just playing like regular deployment. For something that's hammer and anvil style deployment, that's the across the long ways of the table. So like the deployments are like the 6 feet apart. That's a word, or like a phrase with a tie over from like Warhammer. You'll see it in there. I believe they also call like the regular deployment, or on the short ends, Dawn of War deployment. But a lot of us just call it regular deployment because it's just like, oh, I'm across from you at like a 4-foot gap between us, and it's easier to play on instead of like playing on the 6 inches and only having the 6 feet and only having 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
What do you think about characters and in units and using them in your command deck to like vie for that position so that you can have a better outcome, Mike?
It's a weird one, just like again coming from Woodrune, where the priorities with chance impact your stack a little bit more. Because when I was playing Woodrune a lot, like what I was doing a lot of the time, because chants were so essential, is I would put my, because characters can't chant, but they make tokens. So if you want to set up a a tier 2 or tier 3 chant right at the top of your next turn, you put your character cards at the bottom of your deck, and then they just produce a bunch of tokens, and then you get to blow it right at the beginning. Hopefully you've won priority, or else everything is about to start unraveling for you. But with Nords, I don't have that same consideration. So yeah, there's a couple different approaches that I've been taking. Like in the early game, I'll always put my characters at the top. Just because I would prefer to know where the opponent is putting things before I decide where the Bochosen are going. If we're going to cut right to the point there.
Yeah, we've got to know where the Bochosen are going. That's the key there.
That's just Bochosen optimization at that point. But
tell me about the Bochosen's like owner's manual. You got an owner's manual for that thing?
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, you just throw them up there and then fish for ones. I may have just paraphrased the whole manual, but sort of like from there, there's a couple, like I'll quite often throw cards at the bottom if I don't have any reason to be delaying what I'm doing. But what I'm finding I'm doing a lot now as well is in the mid game, especially when I've got later deployments that are coming on, sort of after my first wave of mediums, is I'll usually put like call it just to myself in my own mind, an intermission of character draws, just between the stuff that has to act, and then usually the stuff that can be at the bottom, which on later turns tends to be whatever range guys are still alive for me, and then if I want to make sure that I have room or that everything else is in position to make space for one of my units coming on the table, then I'll usually throw those units at the bottom just so that everything else is committed. And then that way, if I need to make any last second adjustments the way that I'm deploying, then I have a couple extra, activations to see how things come together.
You got some options.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've actually put like, it's more so for the medium regiments than it is for the heavy regiments when I'm using my command stack and like looking to bring stuff onto the table. I'm like, I'll activate like a light, do something, and then maybe I'll activate a medium because I'm just waiting like to see what my opponent's doing, and just having something come onto the table, even though like I'm giving its position away earlier on, isn't the end of the world, because like if it's a medium, it can go score, and if I'm just running it to go score anyway, and it's going that way, well, my opponent can like intuitively figure out what it's doing the moment it goes like directly for that objective zone.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm looking for like turn by turn is what needs to go first. There's usually one thing that needs to go first in each turn, and it's like, okay, that thing needs to go first. It goes on top of my deck. What needs to go second is kind of like, okay, maybe this thing can go second because like I want to kill that because that's the biggest threat, and this is the regiment I have across from it, so like I'm gonna put that second. On turns that I'm kind of like milling about because I'm in an advantage position, just because let's say I'm on those objectives, like I mentioned before, I have guns and I have wizards who are just casting spells. Like I'll actually put my guns and wizards first, just to get that plink damage in, because I know my opponent is looking to kill those things because they're annoying as all hell, as you know for sure, Mike. Even though like, oh man, my fire dight's gonna go off, and then I roll like 4 or 5 and a bunch of 6s, and I'm like, well, I only made one success. That's a fail because of how magic works. Like, great. But I'll start like shooting those forward to get that little bit of skirmishing damage in before anything else bigger goes in. And if my opponent is going to be sending bigger things in, it's usually going to hit those lighter range units first anyway. So I might as well get something out of them before they die.
Yeah.
and that's kind of my mentality. While as the game progresses and I have, let's say, my hammer and your hammer like across from each other, like in that Nords game we played where I had a unit of Steel Legion, you had the unit of Uger. Like they're both hammers, so they both want to go first. So it was very much like this is going first. Even if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. Or if I go first, like I'm gonna hit you and kill your Ugers. Yeah. So like that unit of Steel Legion had to go first, and that was the first thing on my command deck. Like, what was the like? I know I won that roll off, but do you remember what was on the top of your deck? Was it the Ugers?
I'm trying to think without looking back at the photos or anything of where that would have been at. It probably would have been the Ugers. Potentially, depending on the board state, there might have been something. I find personally, and I don't know whether this is because I'm a genius or an idiot, but I quite often like what is the top priority for activation for me. Like I'll be so stressed about getting something off at the top of the turn, I lose the roll off, and then somebody draws a card that I just didn't for at the side of the table that I don't care at all about. That just anything can happen on, and it's not like my priority at that point in time. And then it comes back around to me, and I get to do exactly the thing that I wanted without any opposition or interference, and I get confused.
You're like, oh shit, I've lost the roll off, and he's gonna totally go for that thing I want to do, and it's like, nope, he activated something way over there.
Yeah, and beyond that, and especially with 100K. Players always want to be cute with those character activations and the noble strategic whatever, what have you.
They are cute.
And so there's always like, I can't believe how many times I've been like feeling just incredible tension in my mind for what the next activation is going to be, and then the 100K player across from me is just like, Noble Lord, back to you, and it's like, okay. what the hell are you playing at here?
what big are you outthinking me? Like...
Yeah, are you or aren't you? Because that's where I get confused. But
do you ever walk over to their side of the table just to like figure out what their game plan is and just stand there and be like, are they crazy?
Yeah. Well, I wonder how many people think that about me, honestly.
You're fine.
One thing I try to a trap that I fall into that I think bears mentioning as well, because this has inadvertently become also an activations episode in addition to movement.
Is movement affects so much of the game. Like we're gonna hit a bunch of different things and kind of like focus on movement, but also generalize a bunch of other aspects because they all come down to like how'd you get there and why are you there, and that's your movement and your positioning.
Yeah, but what was I gonna say? No, it's gone.
You've lost it?
Yeah, it's absolutely just left. Oh. But that's fine. It's opens the door. It opens the charge up. Oh, yeah, the trap that I fall into, actually, it came back to me. The trap that I fall into with activations a lot, and you mentioned this as well, is sometimes I'll throw something higher in the stack that I know is going to die because I think if I can activate with it first, it'll get a little plink in before it dies.
Yeah.
Whereas quite often I should just let it go and focus on the thing that's actually going to do work if I win priority. I'm only mentioning this more for myself. I'm sure I would like to think there are other people in the world who make the same mistake as me or this bad valuation. So if I can get through to just one person who's losing because they keep prioritizing their one stand of hunters when there are better things that they could be doing with priority, then I've really done something of value with this platform that I've been given.
I feel like you're using your learning experience to educate the wider masses.
One hopes, but
as long as one person,
like
learns from this, you'll be happy and sleep well tonight.
Yeah, if I get through to one wargaming kid out there,
reach for the stars, child. You can do it.
Yeah. But that's, beyond that, so this seems like a good place as any to drop into my personal favorite topic, or subcategory of the topic of movement, which is fluid formation.
You're hitting me with this monster now, aren't you?
Yeah, the best rule in the game.
Fuck.
When the game is fighting bumper cars, you can't do any better than something that gives you a free correction to your movement, or lets you go skinny to get through something and then go wide again without losing 5 inches, which anyone will tell you is a big difference.
Yeah. I actually clicked over to the rule book and I was already on fluid formation, so good on me.
Yeah.
I'll read this out for everyone. So, fluid formation. This regiment may perform a free additional reform action during its activation. This free reform action must be performed before the regiment takes its first action or at the end of its activation after all other actions have been resolved. Okay, we're still going. A regiment with this special rule can draw line of sight from all arcs, not just from its front, and may perform volley actions against regiments in its flank or rear as well. Where this is the case, count the closest rank or file of that regiment as the first rank. So, that's a bunch of words.
Yeah.
But this is a very strong rule in this game, and it's been getting a lot more attention than maybe it did at the start during 1.15, or a lot newer, or a lot, I can say newer, but yeah, a lot newer players kind of came into Conquest, because I know for us, we joined it at 1.15 because our COVID restrictions were finally lifted where we live, and so we could play. And you first read this rule and it kind of goes all right, I get to make a free reform at the start or at the end, and I can shoot from 360. That doesn't really okay, that's fun, but it isn't super powerful. But as Mike said, once you start playing with it and actually start using it, there's actually some deeper combos you can get with this, what are quite funny. And I'll actually start talking to him, but I'm gonna let Mike kind of go on his fluid formation rant or discussion of it.
There's a few different there's a lot of flexibility that it adds to it, just even beyond getting the reforms, which again can help you avoid bad terrain, or things like that. But in addition to that, one thing that I've been seeing a lot more discussion about recently as well is using it to get a little bit of extra reach on a charge, because you can use that wheel to rotate, to fan out and then rotate, and then making sure, because you go from point to point when you're determining charges. So if you swing your left or right sufficiently in a direction, you can cut down a little bit of the space and help smooth out those charges. And as we've discussed already, smoothing things out is always worth doing in this game. Beyond that, the second paragraph that touches on drawing line of sight from all arcs, not just the front, that's another area where things get really stupid and fun, because you can do a lot of silly fire and fade stuff. Just with this special rule alone, with Raptor Riders, if you have ranged attacks, you can do stuff push up one turn with a double move, and then end it by flipping around backwards, or doing a 180, I guess, to explain that in a way that is understandable to a listener. And then the next turn you can shoot just like you were facing forward, and then you can retreat on a second move without penalty if you're willing to give up the take aim, for instance. So it's a lot of little weird things like that you can do. The other thing is just being able to quickly reposition across the battlefield is really huge. One thing that I like doing a lot is Woodrune with the Raptor Riders, because they have that 8-inch move and fluid formation, is just to commit to one lane, to use that metaphor that I was using previously. And
the MOBA metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. So I commit them and maybe some other mobile units or units that I'm willing to give up one lane. Somebody sees the Raptor going up one way, and they generally makes them think that something is happening there. So if I can get a slower unit, or one that's big and hard to move around, all the way across the map, and then my raptors just bounce, then that tying up a unit for the game is almost as good as killing it in a lot of cases.
Yeah, or like if you start running down that lane and you just like, let's say you then use that reform to just turn 90 degrees and just go right through the middle and start heading to the other side of the board, like
Yeah.
yeah, they'll never see it coming. Like one of my like why I put value towards the Raptor Riders is mainly because like they can very quickly and easily get into the enemy deployment. Like they can get into my deployment, and now I gotta like have something to get rid of them. So like I'll march onto the table, and then next turn I'll charge them and kill them, or they're hitting lights and killing lights. But that does tie up like that medium or heavy unit what did fight and kill them, because like if I don't kill them to the man, now I'm like I'm there being stuck and like not farther forward threat projecting with that unit, or I've killed them but I've only gone like 9 inches, while I would traditionally go, let's say, like the 16, because I'm using the Vanguard rule, and then let's say it's Steel Legion, so I'm double timing the next turn, so I would have been another 16 up. So
Yeah.
like it does keep that unit back, allowing you as a player to push other units forward, even though that Raptor Rider unit died. With Fluid Formation, they're a great skirmishing unit. One of the other combos I want to get onto is in 100 Kingdoms. There's the Imperial Officer who can take a unit of Imperial Ranger Corps, and they have Fluid Formation. The Imperial Officer can take drill. Was it 4? No, clicking on these because they don't actually tell you what you do until you click on them. So drill 3 for fire and advance. So, and if you have an Imperial Officer in the regiment, you can activate 2 draw events. So each of these drills is a draw event, so you can activate 2 of them, and you can pick 2 of them. So fire and advance gives you, if this regiment performed a volley action as its second action during its activation, it may take a free additional march action immediately after the volley action is resolved. Okay, cool. Then you will take drill 2, what's double time. If this regiment performed 2 march actions during its activation, it may take a free additional march action. And this is where it gets funny. So you run the Imperial Ranger Corps up. You then will march like just within. So your first action is you will like. How do I say this? I guess you'll run them as far as possible. You will then Fluid Formation, because it has to be your first action you do to benefit from the free Fluid Formation. Then you'll march a little bit, maybe not a ton, maybe just to stay in range, maybe to back out of range a bit, because you've spun 180 around, you can just march your full distance back. You don't have to do any of that half marching stuff. Then you will shoot. Then you will get a march for fire in advance, because you've achieved a volley on your second action. This will then trigger your fire in advance march. Well, now you've done 2 marches, so then you'll trigger your double time march, and you'll get like 3 marches out of it and just like displace 18 inches. Well, I guess you'll displace like 15 plus your whatever range you're at, because the Imperial Officer's in the unit. And it's just like they're very maneuverable, and I've played around with Imperial Ranger Corps before, just with the Fluid Formation, and they do like swing and move and shoot a lot. Them being volley 3 is really nice because of that extra like being able to hit stuff, because a lot of 100 Kingdoms volley stats are usually 2. But it's quite funny when you see it, like someone's doing all of that to just like shoot or like spin, move, shoot, move, and you're like, come back, and you're like, nah. And then next turn you're going to spin, move, shoot, like maybe start wheeling or just backing up.
Yeah.
Like it now makes them harder to pin down, especially if it's against a unit that's like a traditional movement 5 unit, which only like has a banner, so it's only moving 11 each turn.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is you do got to watch out though once you start running out of table space, or where you're going to be going with them, and if you're not stepping on the toes of your other stuff. So like in a vacuum it looks really nice and funny, but how that actually plays out is different. Like you're usually just like shooting at them and leading them into something else that can actually handle that unit fully. What is another thing? I know in Order of the Sealed Temple has Fluid Formation as well. Just got to go find them. Court Squires. No one talks about Court Squires. Order of the Steel Temple. Here we go. So they have fluid formation, and they are a speed 8 cavalry. Mike said earlier to kind of like how you use fluid reform to cut down on the charge distance. So this is speed 8 cavalry. You're going to be rolling your d6 to kind of get in. It's besides the mounted squires, the fastest cavalry 100 kingdoms currently have. With fluid formation though, and because you can draw arcs out of all sides, you activate this unit when you want to charge them, and you will turn them 90 degrees, so like your long end is sticking as far out as possible. Then measure your charge distance. So at that point, you've just gained like an extra, I think like 3.5 inches upon your charge, and usually that's good enough to just get in with that. So then you'll declare the charge, and then you will swing them 90 degrees again, making them like flush where they were, but like further up, and then you'll move them, and then you'll do that free swing once you contact to like close the door to like charge. So yeah, like fluid formation is a great rule.
Yeah, it's it's hard to overstate the utility that it has. But like I said, it's maybe the best special rule in the game.
Is there? I don't know. I feel like Blessed might have like be a good runner up to it.
Yeah, Blessed is quite good.
But fluid formation really does help out on, like as you said, fixing your mistakes.
I'm gonna make a special rules tier list and make everyone furious. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no! Now I want to hear about the special rules tier list.
Tell you what.
Am I gonna sit there in the corner, like be chained up and like have to like cry and beg to be let out to like voice my opinions as you do it all, or what?
I mean, if that's what you're into, then I'm sure we can accommodate that. But I just want to talk mess about Fearsome mainly. But no, I was just thinking about what are really the runners up for fluid formation for really great rules. Smite is pretty nice.
Yeah, Smite's a good one because it just gets rid of defense.
Nuclear hot take.
Oh, okay, here we go. How hot is this? Should I get oven mitts?
It's so hot, you're gonna feel like Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 when she has the dream about Judgment Day. And she's holding on to the chain link fence and she gets burned into a skeleton.
Yeah, the sweet skeletons they got at like the science store. They just like threw them on the ground after.
Yeah,
like to the bone.
Exactly. So this is that take. Are you ready? Are you ready?
All right, I'm
to meet
I'm
your
sitting
destiny.
down.
Inspired is a good rule.
Okay, what?
Yeah,
it is
right.
It is a good rule.
It's right up there with fluid formation. The reason being, +1 clash is really valuable.
Help! I'm being oppressed.
This is the analysis that people want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are we gonna talk about Inspired?
No. I was just being annoying.
Are you pulling my chain? Like
your chain is getting fully yanked at this point. I'm sorry to say.
Like if I want to think about this like tactically and like provide insight and learning, yeah, you know what? Inspire probably is the best rule in the entire game. Just an action that increases a stat value or take aim. Like, yeah, it it probably is. Just
yeah, it's alright. See, I actually didn't intend to open that can of worms. I just thought it was gonna be like, nope, it's an adequate rule. Moving right along.
No, like. When do you not use Inspire?
It's a core, like that's the thing. It's a core, like it's something that the game is designed around. And I remember actually when I was explaining to a friend of mine that I play with over TTS sometimes, like you have to add 1 to the clash on every stat line that you see because you're generally going to be inspiring when you attack.
Yeah, so like 3s go to 4s, 2s go to 3s, 1s. basically the same.
That's why, I mean, I don't want to get too, like, I don't want to talk about the special rule, but one thing I'll say is that when you get inspired for free for some reason, it does feel weird to only have one thing to do on an activation when you're fighting somebody, because it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to clash, and, well, I guess we're already inspired, so now we do a Fortnite dance.
Well, okay, well, I'm gonna provide another the devil's advocate to this. It's really good because when you do that clash, you're already inspired. You have saved an action, and let's say you kill that regiment, or it's like an MSU, and you're like a bunch of Varangian guard, and you just like go to town on it and kill it. Well, your second action is going to be a march action, and you could maybe potentially back up. You could potentially move. Well, you could move forward to keep pushing your advantage, or go for other stuff. You could reform if you're facing in some random direction for some reason. It allows you to make those tactical choices that you would traditionally not have. So, because
Yeah.
a lot of the times when I'm in fights and I'll once again to reduce randomness, reduce risk, have a more secure game. Even if I'll have a bunch of Steel Legion fight something, and even though that I'm pretty sure they'll kill it on the Clash 3 dice, I'll still inspire to get Clash 4 because I just don't trust my dice.
Yeah.
I want to secure the kill so that I'm not I'm not stuck behind whatever this unit is that I'm trying to kill, and I can go forward next turn.
Yeah. No, for sure.
If I'm gonna, yeah, I don't want to spend 2 turns doing it. And if I get inspired for free, I'd be like, sweet, I kill it, and then I'm going to keep going. Because at this point, if the Steel Legion are in combat, they're just charge, kill, charge, kill, charge, kill. That's...
Yeah.
Once they get there and get into that rhythm, it's just charge, kill, charge, kill, charge, kill.
And that's fair, but I mean, once, let's say, for instance, you, I can't think of a unit off the top of my head that's always inspired or has Dauntless or whatever. So let's just assume there's the turbo guys. And they always have inspired. Well, let's say they're on turn 3 of their 6-turn fight with a unit of Steel Forged, and you're just going, I clash, and then you roll your hits, and 2 of them go through, and then you go, all right, for my second action, I just do a Fortnite dance. That's when it feels a little like you get so used to having inspired to make use of that second action that when it's taken, even though you wouldn't do anything else with it anyway, when that thing to do with it is taken away from you, you're just like, well, this is a little disappointing.
Another thing I will have to say, if you have an always inspired, I believe it works even if you're broken. So you could still fight back if you'd spend an action to unbreak yourself, and then because you're always inspired, well, guess what, you're attacking with that inspired and you're never losing it.
That's a good point, and also, sorry, I didn't mean to just cut you off like that, but I want to say this before it falls out of my head again, but actually Bloodlust does interact with being broken in a way that I think people don't normally notice. So normally you can't charge when you're broken, but it's my understanding that Bloodlust overrides that. So
now I scroll to reread Bloodlust, even though I read it at the start of this.
Yeah, now I'm double checking because I'm second guessing myself, and I'm like, does it work that way?
No. Can we cut this part or just keep it in?
See how long it goes.
If the result is higher, you must perform a charge action against the closest enemy regiment in line of sight within the regiment's maximum charge.
Oh, yeah, so that's where
so this would have to go to broken, wouldn't it? Broken. Search that up.
Because broken says you can't charge, but I think if you lose the Bloodlust roll, then you charge even though you're broken.
So now we got to go into rules overriding. Does a special rule override a core rule?
I mean, that's anybody's guess. I think that's something that we're going to find out for sure in May, because I know that there's been discussion about it. So, I mean...
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we get to just speculate wildly. That's fun too.
We could do whatever we want. No one will notice. And score. Yeah, good job, search function.
Yeah, so I mean, my read of the rules, assuming that the special rule overrides the core rules, is that you would be able to charge if you fail a bloodlust roll, but you wouldn't inspire.
But if you were always inspired, then you would get it. So yeah, like there are combos and weird corner cases for being like having inspire always on, and that is really nice because that does allow you to have more options because you don't have to waste that action to inspire. And one of the things I've done with 100 Kingdoms is like I've gotten a bunch of Crimson Tower guys stuck in a combat with something, and they were already weak from, let's say, the impact and charge from the turn before. So at the start of that turn, either I win the roll off or I get hit or whatever, and then I decide to clash, killing that unit. Well, I have a second action, and I didn't bother to inspire because like there was like maybe one guy left, and he's just holding everything up. So I immediately charge into something behind them, and just do my like impact attacks with my brutal impact 2, and I'm taking Ophelia's Roar with the Priory Commander, so you know I'm going for that terrifying 2, and I've actually used that where I've killed off something holding them back, and then I've charged forward, killing another regiment. Yeah, and that's been actually like really fun to do. Yeah, it feels really good, and that's like one of the instances I will not inspire from is like if it's like a for sure kill. So like yeah, let's say there's like a full 12 guys in front of me, like 3 stands, and they want to fight. Well, I'm gonna inspire clash those guys because I don't want my dice to screw me over. But like let's say if there's a stand left and it only has 2 wounds left, and I have like 10 or 15 attacks coming into it, like okay, I'm pretty sure I can get it on clash 3. Yeah, I'm not worried.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. Yeah, so I mean, overall movement to circle again back to where we started from here. Yeah, it's it really is. I think the defining element to the game, and I mean that's most people would tell you that, but that's what makes rank and flank games different from other tabletops.
Skirmishes. What would you classify like 40k or Age of Sigmar? Like I don't classify it as like a skirmish game, but you have a unit cohesion. I'd say that's like a war game. Well, it is a war game. But...
well, I mean, like if you want a legitimate nuclear hot take that is really beyond the scope of the intended purpose of this podcast, 40k.
We already talked about like your special rule tier list that is hopefully going to get made in the next year.
Yeah, we'll see. Definitely that's a meme of the skeleton saying still waiting for that tier list type beat, but we'll see what I manage to get done. I think it's a pretty funny idea and it'll make people upset, so that is a really good incentive for me to do things. But
so human suffering is how you get that's your motivation to wake up every day.
I wouldn't phrase it like that, but you're not far off the mark.
Oh man, you work for the DMV.
Pretty close. But oh my goodness, now I've lost my what I wanted to say again. Good heavens. Is he going to come back to me this time? I don't think so.
Okay, well, we were talking about Warhammer 40k.
Right, yeah, my nuclear hot just stir up the masses take on that is that 40k would be classified as a skirmish rule set that was afflicted by scale bloat so severely that you now have a rule set that doesn't match the scale of the game, or not rules bloat, sorry, but scale bloat. You now have a rule set that doesn't actually match the scale of the game that it's intending to, or the scale of the conflict that it's intending to simulate.
Okay. I know 10th edition is coming out and people are really excited for that. So
I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think the and again, this is far beyond the scope of this podcast, but there are problems with the or realities of the rule set that are far beyond the scope of what they've stated they're going to change in that edition. So I hope it's fun. I'm not ruling out that it'll be fun to play, but I don't think they're going to change the things that I would like to see changed to make it really
like the game for you.
Not even the game for me, but just a rule set that matches the game that it's currently trying to be, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, like I want to say like because GW has been around for so long, you do see how the rules have changed to affect it through the various editions, especially people who played through them, because it seems like every 3 editions they do like a facelift and revitalization of the rules for the game. Like maybe not like overall like how you interact with dice, but they do change up and like some bigger core aspects of the game. Like I know there was a big jump from like 7th to 8th, and I think there was another big jump from maybe it was like 3rd. Like a lot of people like remember fondly 3rd edition, or maybe it was a Warhammer Fantasy. It's one of the two. One of the thirds, everyone's like, oh, 3rd or like 4th. But yeah, that'd probably be like a whole redo of the like you'd have to break 40k down to its essentials and then like reform it.
Yeah,
it's a Space Hulk what's gotten too far out of control, sacrificing 1,000 people to a golden throne every day.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's yeah. I mean that's sort of an apt metaphor. Like it seems like the game, at least in my observation, because I love to read deprecated rule books for games. It's kind of my hobby at this point, but
I got some rule books for you. If you want to read Mark 1 War Machine, it's wild.
Yeah, I do honestly, but like
I'll bring it to you tomorrow. How about that?
That's wonderful. I'll definitely read that. But like originally, 40k was like it started off sort of branching off or derived from another system called Laser Burn that was for like skirmish level, like almost essentially an RPG with like more developed combat mechanics type of miniature game.
I'm not gonna lie, I never knew that. I just thought like 40k was just like it was Warhammer Fantasy, and they're like, what if we just go to space? Like I think it was like Command and Conquer with Tim Curry. It's like space. They just went to the moon and kept going. I actually never knew that.
Yeah, I mean that's what they were trying to do, but it did like Rick, I think it was Rick Priestley or one of the old Warhammer guys originally developed Laser Burn, and then he took a lot of the ideas both for like the lore and the rule mechanics and then adapted them to Warhammer 40,000. But so like to me it seems like 40k was originally meant to be like 20 guys and a half track in terms of like the scale of the conflict on each side, and it's now like,
armies.
You literally have like you could play a chapter of Space Marines if you so desired.
You can literally put gods onto the tabletop and watch them like disintegrate people.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like even just the scale of the conflict has gone from like the armies of these different factions to just like here's the magic dad of 1,000 Space Marines who's woken up from his incredible sleep and he's here to fix the universe, going up against like one of the manifestations of an actual god of fundamental force of the universe, and a very magic elf.
A very magic elf. I love the guy who's like, I don't know if you follow any like Warhammer like 40k. I mostly like follow the lore. But like, was it the Lion is getting released, and it looks like Charles Dance from like Game of Thrones, like the guy who plays Tywin Lannister. So it's like, he's perfect. Tywin Lannister will solve all their problems. To wind us a little back down to like reality and trying to not go into space here. Another game that is like, we were talking about like big war games and like kind of skirmish games. Like I play a bit of Kill Team with some buddies, and so like Kill Team is a very like skirmishy game. Conquest feels like it is a skirmish game design with like basically you're like in the body of like a big war game. Like it's running war game hardware on skirmish game software, And the reason I feel this is because a lot of people usually have 6 to like 15 at the high end. Maybe some people have more like cards in their deck. And like 6 to 15 like activations is not a ton if you really want to like break it down and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I've ran lists that are 8 cards, and I'm currently running a list that's like 13 cards. And usually people average between like 9 or 10 cards in their command deck. So and it's kind of like it kind of treats itself as a skirmish game, just but like the skirmish models you're using are just like big bricks, and you're just like, go buy big brick, just bounce into that guy, yeah, get him. So I don't know if you ever noticed that about Conquest.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that. I think it's not a bad, like, I don't want to roll a million dice, and I like that the units in Conquest have, like, the weapon profile is expressed through the stat line in its totality, and it's not a separate block of additional stats and granular sort of numbers to keep track of, or to worry about, or to toggle between, as the case may be.
You're not flipping through the books.
Yeah. So it's
yeah, I do actually appreciate that. Like, it's easy to pick up and easy to understand, easy to play. Like, here are the stats.
Yeah.
Here are the special rules. Go.
Yeah, so I do like that about it, and I think that they've found a good balance between like depth and streamlining what is, because I mean, like, you are right. If this game was more like other war games on the market, like a 2,000 point game of Conquest would take an entire weekend to play out. So they've done a good job of not making it that way.
Can you imagine if you had to make attack rolls with every single guy individually?
Yeah, and then he's also got like 3 different rifles on him for some reason, so you then have to go through, and there's nothing limiting. Sorry, not rifles, crossbows, just not to make it super obvious what I'm referring to. So he's got 3 different types of crossbows on him, and for some reason he's able to just like action hero style, like flip just between, like fire off a clip and then flip to the next one and fire off a clip of arrows.
This reminds me, did you ever watch I think it was like 2004, there was the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie?
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Oh, if you ever want to enjoy yourself, go check out the clip where it's Hugh Jackman versus like the vampire brides in the village, and he's like has a repeating like barrel loaded crossbow, and he's like, and he's just like unloading into like the vampire brides and their spawn, and it's like,
oh wow,
as like a young kid, and you're watching this, you're like, wow, Hugh Jackman's cool as hell, and then as you watch it as an adult, you're like, all right, this was fun, but also this is terrible, but I'm quite enjoying myself. Thank you, Hugh Jackman.
That's fair. I do love a bad movie, so. But I also hate to enjoy myself, so you've really put me in quite a position here.
It's like not enough self-loathing, is there?
Never enough for me.
We'll find something that you can enjoy that you still despise.
Well, we've spent an hour talking about it.
Is it the movement system of Conquest?
No, it's, I was gonna, just my win rate, I was gonna make a self-deprecating reference to my win rate, but then it started to feel like it was a little too close to me just being like, I don't like this game, actually, and I didn't want to convey that either, so.
We talked about this at the school guidance counselor. Your goals are to not suck.
Yeah.
Get good.
Here's the problem is I actually, like, my rhetoric traffic jammed itself like 3 regiments trying to get around each other to land a charge. So actually this all worked in service to the point that we're trying to make, is how I'm going to sell this.
This is where it's going.
Yeah.
It's like, don't step on your own toes. Find a good spot. Look for the scenario. Look for openings. Use the terrain defensively to get yourself up the table. take a step back and analyze and look at it. Like for what we play, usually our tables are like pre-set up, or if we're getting a game on the off day, our tables are like we'll just like discuss like, oh, okay, what scenario you want to play? Oh, this one. Um, like what was it, Echelon? I think I don't want to play Echelon anymore because like at one point I was like just playing Echelon and I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I have to play this goddamn scenario anymore. It's useless. Um, Man, we should do an episode on scenarios.
Oh, definitely.
Do you want to do that one next? Like, is that our public? Like, we're making it public, so we have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just did, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, that's a good place to jump off from here. I feel like, honestly, like, I mean, probably it's about time to wind down on this episode, but I feel like there's even more that we didn't really touch on for movement. A, because there's so much to talk about, and B, because I'm personally not very organized. So I'm just going to quickly fire off one last point and then not expand on it, so that you can, so that the person listening to this can just ruminate on it and, grow spiritually in turn. But movement is pretty standard across different types of units. So like usually infantry is going to be a 5, fast infantry or skirmishers are going to be a 6, cavalry is a 7, fast stuff is an 8, things like that.
if you have no armor and on a fast thing, you're like a 9.
Yeah. So
Is there a 10? Oh, the Abomination's a 10. Watch out for that thing.
yeah.
It's quick.
So it is good to just know those movement breakpoints and keep those in mind when you're making decisions on the battlefield. That's something that in my head, I was like, we're going to talk about that for a considerable amount of time. And now I'm trying to say it as quickly as I can, like the Micro Machines guy, because there's a non-existent time pressure for me in my mind.
You know, that is really good. Should we talk about that one and then sign off? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we totally forgot about this. Okay, so I'll get into it. Units with their different movements, as Mike have said, and say their values. One of the things I'm always looking for while I'm making my positioning is threat ranges. This is like, wow, like basic stuff that I can't believe we actually forgot about.
Yeah.
But we're obviously running off a script here. So whenever things move up the table, I'm asking my opponent, what is your threat range? Like, what is your march plus your charge is D6, like that's just straight up. But actually some things do affect it. Like the phalanx rule gives you a +1 defense during your draw event, but it reduces your charge to just a straight +3 whatever your march is. So like usually those units are movement 5, so they kind of like top out at 8. And then there's one thing you got to be careful about is household knights with a tourney champion, because they're movement 7, but they take the tournament champion to go to movement 9 during the charge, and then they get to roll their d6. So asking someone what their threat range is really good, so you have an understanding of what their march charge is if they're trying to get to you, or if you're within like march then charge, or just like charge distance.
Yeah.
Just so you can play it safe. Usually, if I'm trying to get to them and not let them get into me, I might put myself in that 5 or 6 range. So if they're speed 5, I'll put myself like 10 or like 10.5 to 11 inches out. Well, I guess at 11 inches out, like I'll just go 11.1 and they won't even get to me. But I'm looking at that like 10.5, so that they have to, like, they could potentially fail it and I can get to them, or like if I outpace them, I can get to them easier. And the other thing you want to watch out for is the threat of guns. So a lot of ranged units, like what guns and ranged units, they have variable ranged guns, so they're not all the same. So asking my opponent what his walk and shoot range is always viable, so that you can have an idea of like if there, there's like some open terrain, or there's a gap in terrain or other regiments, and your opponent's kind of gunning for something. You can ask like, hey, what's your movement and your shooting? So like a lot of things I ask Mike is like, what's the range of your slingers? Even though he's told me a million times, and he's like, movement 6, 18 inches. So I know right away that this unit can threat 24 inches on a straight line, basically. Once you start getting to angles, it gets a little weirder, but you're kind of covered if it's like right across from each other. So I'll look and I'll be like, well, is there like some defensible terrain that I can hide myself in? Is there Do I need to be that far forward to get shot at? Can I like wait a turn? Like you're kind of looking for those things to keep yourself safe because it kind of sucks just losing stuff to like a bunch of damage before it gets in there because like this whole point of guns is to whittle you down. So when you actually get into that melee brawl, it's easier for you to kill that regiment. Some guns, however, just do so much damage, you might as well just take the guns. But traditionally speaking, the guns are there to soften up the targets.
Yeah.
And people don't really like to get just like tickled and shot at. Like I don't know, maybe it just feels worse to be tickled. Do you not like tickled? Like if I tickled you and then if I punched you, which one would you have preferred?
I mean, I guess I would rather be punched almost 100% of the time, but I feel like that's a deeper discussion than because one feels invasive and the other one I can there's a clear path, like my options for how I can respond if you hit me are a lot more straightforward than if you tickle me, so that it actually has nothing to do with Conquest. But no, getting chipped at sucks. Like it's a shitty feeling, and I know this because I look at people's faces while I play my slingers and my bow chosen.
You thought I was bad with Merc crossbows.
Yeah, I'm the most degenerate range player in our local meta in that sense. But moving back to as well, sorry, I wanted to mention, because it's relevant to the two factions that I play in different ways, is paying attention to threat range is really good. Wadrun have a trick for that makes them a little, like, that is counting on you not asking that question all the time, because if they are, like, they do have a chant that gives them a bonus to their charge. Of 2 inches.
The famine chant?
Yeah, or the Predator Supremacy ability gives lights and mediums a buff to their charges for that one turn. So if you're not considering that, then you can get caught by it. Same thing with Raiders for Nords. You can give them the Shield Biter upgrade, and that gives them +2 on charges. I'm pretty sure it's +2. Same as adds +2 inches to its charge distance, and then you also get a buff during duels. But the main benefit is the charge distance. So with that, like if people are not paying attention to that, they're going to look at your Raiders and go, oh, it's got a threat of 5 + 6. I'm going to conduct myself accordingly, and then they might leave themselves in the range of a 7 + 6 charge.
Yeah, that's why you ask those questions. Just because if you can, like the best defense in a war game is to not be in range at all. If you want something to live and it needs to live, just never put in threat range of anything.
Yeah,
and it will live. Simple as that. Like it's never in danger at that point. Can you always do that? No, but you can limit multiple threats or pick a threat that is something you can handle. So like let's say those raiders are coming into a unit of, let's say, like an Imperial officer with Steel Legion, and there's like another unit of Berserks coming into the Imperial officer with Steel Legion, and like both of them are probably going to get to you, but if you moved like over, like you did a side move of 2.5 inches, or if you did like 2 side moves of 2.5 inches for like 5 inches, you will only be charged by the raiders. That's a better thing to be charged by and deal with instead of being charged by both.
Yeah,
you kind of pick and choose your fights there.
Yeah, and that's setting up, sometimes setting yourself up for the worst case scenario is the best thing that you can do with respect to how charges are going to play out, situationally. It's a lot of, I don't know, I'm a really pessimistic person by nature, so I'm always planning for the worst case scenario, but I think some people don't. So if any of those people are listening, follow the lead of the people with depression in your life and plan for the worst.
Expect nothing to live. All you need to do is score.
Yeah.
If you lose everything, you will still win if your points are above your opponent's.
Yeah, if it's light, it's gonna die. If it's medium, it's gonna die, and if it's heavy, it's gonna die. That's the
It's for
only
sure
way
gonna
to,
die.
Yeah, that's the only way to play Conquest.
Yeah, all it matters is you have more points than your opponent at the end of the game. And you know what? There's been times where I've tabled an opponent and they've still won because they had earlier scoring. They kept me out of zones. They've killed more of my didn't like kill more of my stuff, but obviously because I tabled them. But they killed enough of my stuff and kept me out of zones and tied me up and scored their objectives to keep me out and won with that heroic victory, even though I tabled them. And it's like, well, shucks.
Yeah, I'd like to, and I'll discuss this more in the next episode since we've committed to talking about scenarios. But I think,
Oh man, are we doing a 4-hour one? Because I feel like we're gonna be doing 4 hours for that one.
it might be a two-parter in all honesty, just depending on what tangents we go off on, if I'm being perfectly honest. But
If we want to talk about Infinity, is that it?
yeah, well, I mean, it'll probably, who knows? There's infinite possibilities, if you will. But I think it's a flaw in the current scenario pack that everything ends the same way, whether it's being tabled or not being tabled, or by points or not by points. Like, I hope in future scenario packs there's a mix of potential win conditions.
Scenario, I don't mind that it's all the same, like how it's played, just because I used to play War Machine, so it was like a more competitive, more very solid rule set, and like it was very like I want to say like cut and dry of like how rules interact with each other and do everything. So Scenario and their tournament packet was the same way. So if everyone understands how the packet works and it's all consistent all the way through, there's no like gotcha moments, and also it kind of defines what list building is for the tournament level, or like the tournament level player and what they're looking for design. Because like I don't mind if there's like in more of like, let's say, a narrative events or more casual play, there is like, scenario packets that are like kill all your opponent's characters, don't lose anything, like more of those fun ones. But like for myself, coming from like a tournament / competitive background, I'm looking for that consistency in my tournament packet, so I can design and build the most optimal thing in my faction for that, and against whatever my opponents are going to bring. So having that consistency of the packet being like, this is the only way to win, it's very cut and dry and defined of what you're looking for.
Yeah,
that's me.
I see what you're saying there for sure. I think is like the initial point that you make there, I think is kind of the linchpin of my counter argument, which is if the scenario packet is consistent and everybody is reading the scenario packet going into it, then it should avoid any gotchas in terms of the mission outcomes and stuff. The only thing is like having a diversity of win conditions, I think, just forces, or one hopes would force a little more diversity in terms of the overall list building, because you have to potentially, adapt to different win conditions that are maybe not going to be advantageous to one list style or another. But
I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I do think they did that in the previous tournament packet. Like, I don't know if you were like, we were kind of playing it a little bit because we found like the rule book. Was it like the 3 scenarios in the rule book? Like, only one of them was actually like playable.
Yeah.
More than like 2 turns. And then when we got into like the actual scenario packet, I want to say they split up into thirds. Like, there was like 3 different ways to win, and there was like 4 scenarios per each way. Like,
I don't really remember one of them that packet, honestly, but
I just remember it was kind of weird, but like it was also doable. But the more recent packet, they've really like nailed down where they're going, what they want to do with it. So I wouldn't be against like having a more narrative slash casual packet, and then like this is what you bring to Adepticon, this is what you bring to Gen Con, this is what you play if you're hosting a tournament at or a non let's say like narrative tournament at your local gaming store.
Yeah.
Like that'd be a really good thing.
Yeah, 2 sets of workable mission packs might be a solution there as well.
Yeah, and like I don't think it would be that hard to do, and also like would that cut out like would that split the community? I don't know. I don't think so. Like if our Vanguard was like, hey man, we're gonna do the narrative event like this weekend, I'd be like, sweet, I'm coming down. Like, hey, we're doing the competitive event like regular tournament this weekend. Like, sweet, I'm coming down. Like I'm gonna go play the game. I don't care that much. Like I'm only there for the alternative head sculpts that we saw in the summer catalog last episode. That's obviously like all the different shields.
Yeah.
I'm gonna replace all my men at arms shields with like Roman shields.
Yeah. I think about that, like I want those alternative heads and shields, but then I think like I have 2 options. It's either buy more Braves or painstakingly on the super glue the heads and shields of 12 Braves and then do surgery on them. Well, I mean,
why don't you put the Brave shields on the Huskarls and the Brave heads on the Huskarls?
There you go. The premise just from proxying, because I have thought about using my Warbred as Ogres and vice versa, and just the premise that one or the other just like sees the other and thinks they're cool and starts emulating them is the reason why I'm proxying them is always really amusing to me. So like a bunch of orcs just being like, yep, big furry capes, big axes and shields, these guys are nailing it. We're gonna be like these guys from now on. Is really funny to me.
Wasn't there like a Droon pirate? Like, what if he sailed up to like the Nord world and was like, well, we gotta put the furs on, it's a little cold for my orc nipples. And they're like, well, let's just start killing the humies and start wearing their clothes. And then it's like, oh, there's some Uger over there, maybe they'll come and help us. It's like, well, I guess we live here now and work for them. Just like a progression of like a generational thing, and it's like, oh, so that's how Wudrun got over here. Cool.
Yeah. And that's why the Huskarl of this farmland is an orc.
That's how it happens. Do you have anything else to say? I think we're kind of good for like our topic. I know we kind of bounced around a little bit and went to a couple different places, but I think we're good there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've laid the groundwork, and then anything we missed is going to kind of come through in later conversations about different aspects of the game, I think. So I don't necessarily have anything. I don't need to micro machines in another set of facts like I did with the movement breakpoints. So I think we're good in that respect.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to I guess this is the first episode of the BonkTable podcast, the real first episode. If you're looking for additional content, we got a YouTube channel called BonkTable. Once again, I would recommend listening from episode 6 and beyond, just because there's better audio, but you know, the first couple episodes are also pretty good. They're just, if you want to deal with worse audio. Mike, do you have anything to plug before we tap out for the night?
No, I don't do shit. This is it for me. But thanks for listening, everybody.
All right.
Yeah, no,
have a good night.
I do have some plans for content that I want to add to this thing in future, but I also don't really want to say too much until I have things to show for it, so that I don't look like a stupid asshole in the future. It's all about hedging your bets. That's a Conquest metaphor too.
You could take that home and cash it at the bank.
Yeah, that's a charge on it too. Is not saying you're going to do something until you know for sure that you're going to do it.
Never accept a charge. Always go for the secure 6-inch move.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no. Again, thank you everyone for listening. It's under the assumption that you are. It's very nice if you are. So that's great. And we'll be back soon enough with more fun ostensibly fun facts and conversations and ideas about how the game of Conquest is played, and maybe we'll get the rules right some of the time, but I'm not making any promises there either.
It's okay. They're going to change the rules in like a couple months. I think we're good.
Yeah, and I'm...
All right. Go ahead.
No.
All right. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.